Right now, without thinking about it, your face just did something. Maybe you raised one eyebrow reading that sentence. Maybe both. Maybe a small furrow appeared between them, the kind that means you are paying attention, or slightly skeptical, or just trying to understand what comes next. You did not decide to do that. Your face decided for you. And the story of why, the real story, goes back to a moment in human evolution that changed the shape of our species forever. A moment when something shifted in the structure of the human skull, and the consequences of that shift are still written on every face you have ever looked at. The real answer is far stranger than you expect. Start with the obvious question. Other animals have fur above their eyes. Some have brow ridges. A few have markings that vaguely suggest eyebrows. But no other animal has what you have. Two strips of mobile, expressive hair that move independently, rapidly, and with extraordinary precision to signal your inner state to every person in the room. Why? For most of human prehistory, our ancestors had massive brow ridges. You have seen them on the skulls. Those thick, heavy shelves of bone that jutted out above the eye sockets in early Homo species. In Homo heidelbergensis, in Neanderthals, in Homo erectus, those ridges were prominent, structural, imposing. They were not decorative. They served real physical functions, reinforcing the skull against the forces generated by powerful jaw muscles during chewing, and possibly providing some protection to the eyes during physical confrontation. But somewhere between 300,000 and 100,000 years ago, something changed in the anatomy of Homo sapiens. The face began to flatten. The forehead became vertical, almost sheer, and those heavy brow ridges reduced dramatically, leaving behind a smooth, mobile zone of skin and muscle above the eyes. Anthropologist Penny Spikins and her colleagues at the University of York published research in 2018 arguing that this change was not random. It was not simply a side effect of other anatomical shifts. The reduction of the brow ridge in Homo sapiens, they argued, was driven by social selection, the pressure to communicate more effectively with other members of an increasingly complex social group. Think about what a heavy brow ridge does to communication. It casts a permanent shadow over the eyes. It creates a fixed expression, a kind of perpetual scowl, regardless of actual emotional state. The individual beneath those ridges might be perfectly calm, curious, or friendly, but the architecture of their face communicates something else entirely. Something fixed, something hard to read. Now imagine living in a social group where reading other people's faces correctly could mean the difference between a cooperative ally and a threat, between safety and danger, between being trusted and being avoided. The mobile eyebrow is a solution to exactly this problem. When the brow ridge reduced, the skin and muscle above the eye, the frontalis muscle, the corrugator supercilii, the orbicularis oculi, became capable of extraordinary movement. Upward, downward, inward, together, independently, in rapid, nuanced combinations that carry information that words often cannot. Psychologist Paul Ekman spent decades cataloging human facial expressions and identified the eyebrow as one of the most information-dense regions of the human face. His work on what he called the facial action coding system, a framework for classifying every possible muscle movement in the human face, showed that the eyebrows alone can signal surprise, fear, anger, sadness, confusion, disgust, and combinations of these states in fractions of a second. Fractions of a second. Faster than speech, faster than conscious thought. The eyebrow is broadcasting before the mouth has decided what to say, and the person watching is receiving that signal just as fast. Here is the piece that makes this remarkable. Humans are extraordinarily good at reading eyebrows. Better, in some ways, than we are at reading any other facial feature. Research by Julian Scheiner and colleagues showed that when subjects were shown photographs of famous faces with the eyebrows digitally removed, recognition rates dropped dramatically. More dramatically than when the eyes themselves were removed. People could identify a familiar face without the eyes far more reliably than they could identify the same face without the eyebrows. The eyebrows, it turns out, are one of the primary identity markers of the human face. Not just emotion signals, identity signals. Your eyebrows are part of how people know it is you. This makes sense when you consider the social world your ancestors navigated. A world where knowing who someone was, specifically and reliably, was as important as knowing how they felt. Where trust was built on recognition, and recognition required a face that could be read quickly, accurately, and from a distance. The mobile eyebrow serves both functions simultaneously. It tells you who the person is, and it tells you how they are right now. But there is still another layer to this. Anthropologist Raphael Lodarsky at Oxford has studied what he calls the eyebrow flash, a rapid upward movement of both eyebrows lasting approximately a sixth of a second that humans use as a greeting signal across virtually every culture ever studied. You do it when you recognize someone from across a room. You probably do it dozens of times a day without realizing it. This signal is so universal, so consistent across cultures with no shared history, that researchers believe it is innate, hardwired into human social behavior rather than learned. Infants produce it. People who have been blind from birth produce it. It does not require seeing someone else do it first. The eyebrow flash appears to mean, at its most basic level, I see you, I recognize you, you are not a threat. In a species that lived in small bands where the distinction between a known ally and an unknown stranger was genuinely life or death, that signal, compressed into a sixth of a second, would have been extraordinarily valuable. And you still do it, every day, without thinking. Now consider what all of this adds up to. The human eyebrow is not a remnant of ancient fur. It is not a minor cosmetic feature. It is the endpoint of a long evolutionary process that reshaped the human skull, reduced one of our most prominent anatomical structures, and produced in its place one of the most sophisticated social communication tools in the animal kingdom. Your eyebrows tell people who you are. They tell people how you feel before you decide to tell them. They signal safety or threat in fractions of a second. They have been doing this reliably and automatically since your species first began living in the kinds of complex social groups that made reading faces a survival skill. Every time someone raises an eyebrow at you, they are using a piece of hardware that evolution spent hundreds of thousands of years refining. Every time you flash a greeting across a crowded room, you are doing something so ancient it predates language, predates agriculture, predates every civilization that has ever existed. And the next time you catch someone's eyebrow moving, in confusion or recognition, or that single skeptical arch that means they are not entirely convinced, remember that you are reading a signal that your brain was specifically shaped to receive. The face knows things the mouth has not said yet. It always has. Right now, without thinking about it, your face just did something. And now you know exactly why.